Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel here. It's been a while since I've done a video, so I thought I'd try something a little different and new for me. Basically, this is just going to be a recap of a recent plein air event I did, and this is just something that I want to try to do for people who want to have a little bit more insight into not only my process, but maybe just other plein air painters' processes in general, how to go about doing plein air events, maybe a few tips and tricks on how to get the most out of them, and just a little bit on how I approach things when I'm doing events like these. So being successful at a plein air event is pretty difficult because there are a lot of things that you got to think about when you're doing an event like this. Plein air events tend to get me to focus on things that I don't normally spend a lot of time thinking about. So whenever you're scoping out an area, you might be asking yourself questions like, would the local clientele be interested in this? Would a picture of this scene connect emotionally with buyers in the area? Do I find the scene interesting enough to spend 2 hours making a picture of it? And can I compose it in a way that discerning art collectors will be drawn to? But these are all questions that you got to ask yourself in order to be successful every time you go out to paint. And add on top of all that, you won't even know if you're correct in your judgment until the show starts and you get the feedback from people in real time. So now you know why it's difficult to have success at plein air shows, because you're just juggling all these ideas in your head as you're trying to make a good painting. So how do I personally go about it? Well, for me, it starts with what I personally find interesting in the area. And the longer you spend in an area, the more intimate you get with it. You appreciate those and focus less on the big picture, the, really tourist attraction type of places. So how do I personally go about it? Well, for me, it starts with what I find interesting about the area. The longer you spend in an area, the more you can appreciate the intimate scenes and focus less overall on, the big pictures, the ones that are like tourist attractions, for example. I have to admit, the most popular scenes are not usually what I go for. Call me quirky, call me scared of being called basic, call it whatever you want. But I take scene selection pretty seriously. I like to find things that I find personally interesting, then show others in a clear way why I found it interesting, and then hope to make them interested in the same thing. It's almost like a magic trick if you can pull it off. But I think I'm getting better at it as I do these events. If I can get myself to go through this process with a popular scene, then that's optimal. But I won't count a place out just because I don't think enough viewers will care about the scene. So I'm on a never-ending quest to find other people who look at the visual world in a similar way that I do, because I feel like those people are going to want to own a piece of mine. It's been said that people like to see their values reflected back to them through what they choose to surround themselves with. So I hope that I can contribute to your life in that way. Alameda is a very interesting city. It's right next to Oakland, yet I feel like they couldn't be less similar for being neighbors like that. Alameda is quite a well-to-do city that's purposely slower than the rest of the Bay Area. And I don't completely mean that figuratively. Most of the island has a speed limit of 25 miles per hour, and they will get you. I think this has an effect of making things a little more calm, quiet, and friendly. It's one of my favorite cities in the Bay Area, but as a place to plein air paint, it's not my first choice. This event challenges me in a certain way because I don't have an abundance of beautiful natural parks to lean on. Instead, I focus on what would make an interesting arrangement of man-made elements. It's a fairly maritime area as well, so you can do a lot of nautical scenes or beaches that almost are like estuaries. So my girlfriend Vanessa and I both did the event together. We like to do that when we're able to. We had a slight advantage from scoping out the island a week before, so I had a few places in mind that I wanted to try out. One of them being Ballena Point, which is an oddly shaped little island that's in the San Francisco Bay. It has amazing views of San Francisco, but the view doesn't necessarily work as an engaging painting. So this is when you scale down your vision to find something that's a little more intimate and hopefully as interesting. So let's look at the first painting that I brought here. This painting is called Little Red. It is a gouache painting, 8 by 10 inches. It's on a watercolor paper that I mount to a panel. So I found this red boat docked in the nearby marina. I thought I was a bit lucky to find a subject that stood out as interesting all on its own, as well as it had a great unobstructed view of it from where I was painting from. So technically speaking, the hardest part of this painting to do was the background buildings and hills. The reason was because it was tough to strike a balance of a background that depicts the feeling of what it is, but doesn't insist on stealing attention from the main subject. So this meant that I had to compress values and desaturate the colors in order to make them feel like they were way back in space, and also simplify the buildings and trees to the point where they just read as an impression of what they are, but not actually making them realistic portraits of insignificant structures. So this ended up being one of my favorite pieces of the week because of the colors and all the little details in the boats came together without feeling overworked. And I like doing the reflections too. So the next day, Vanessa and I went down together in the evening. The day before, I was going to paint a similar scene to the one I'm about to show you, but the scene was directly facing west. So the sun and its reflection of it was making things really impossible to stare at the scene. So I went home and decided to come back and try again the next day. So here's the next painting called In the Golden Fog. 6 by 8 inches, gouache on watercolor paper mounted to board. Get a little closer look at it here. So Vanessa was nearby studying some gentle lapping beach waves, and I went to venture down the path into this little community park. I wanted the effect of light in my piece, obviously, but I needed some shielding from the sunlight since I would have been in the same situation as the day before, if not for the trees in front of me. So knowing that the light in these situations can be fleeting, I knew that I had to work as fast as I could. I blocked this in so fast. It was all about capturing the effect and establishing the major shapes that make up the composition. I didn't really draw anything out in the beginning. Instead, I worked to get the color and light as I saw it first priority. Then after that, I went in and carved out the shapes to establish more accurate ones. So to finish the painting, I scumbled in the texture of the trees, which also helped to soften the edges and subtle value variations within it. I did a ton of editing to the scene. So part of what we do as artists is shape our vision to reflect how we want to see the world. But what I mean in this situation is that there was a birthday party happening by the benches over here. And it was about 15 very loud, very annoying teenagers distracting me. I tried to channel my annoyance into energy that caused me to work fast, which maybe helped with the speed. And there was also someone who left their windsurf sail right in front of my scene too. Be like right around there. It wouldn't have worked as part of the painting, nor did I have any idea how long it would stay there. So for things like that, I think it's best to leave them out of the painting. So this next painting here is called The Old Masonic. Sure you can see that. So this one's also 8 by 10 inches. It's gouache on watercolor paper mounted to the board, just like all the rest of them are. So yeah, the next day was a pretty cloudy and overcast day. On a day like that, if you still want something with a lot of interest in it, your best bet is to either find some architecture or maybe some flowers. I had my eye on this building on Park Street for a while. It's the original Masonic Temple building, and the current one, they moved a couple doors down, by the way. And it has a bunch of interesting elements about it. And I feel that it stands out as a beautiful building on a street that already has an abundance of cool architecture and lots of really cool places to eat as well. Burma Superstar is right nearby, and as I was doing this painting, I was just smelling that grilled chicken, and man, it was killing me. Especially for a poor starving artist like myself. I was very tempted to go over there, but I was fiscally responsible and just had some snacks. But my favorite part of this painting is actually the rough parts in the bottom corner of the painting. So there's a feeling of movement and human energy that gets implied there. And I think it works better to capture the feeling of the scene more than if I had actually tried to paint every detail. And it's definitely a concept that I want to explore more in the future. All right. This next one here is called Happy Hour at Kroll's. And Kroll's is the word that's on the sign there. It's again 8 by 10 inches, gouache and watercolor paper mounted to board. And the Kroll's building was one that also stood out to me. I was looking for places to paint. I went in with a direct painting style because I didn't really have a ton of time left in the day to even paint this one. So the result was some awkward perspective issues I wasn't totally able to shake off, I have to admit. Still, there are some things I like about it. I like the energy. I like that I came in and just attacked it right away. I really like the top level arched windows near the roof of the building. I'm really looking forward to a future attempt at tackling this building. Show you the next one here. It's called Looking South to North Beach. 6 by 8 inches, gouache and watercolor paper mounted to board. So the next day was our designated off-island day, quote unquote. So every other day we're expected to paint on Alameda Island. But on Thursday, we were allowed to paint anywhere in the surrounding counties minus Sonoma County. And I chose Sausalito for a number of reasons, actually. For one, it's a beautiful city. If you've never been there, I recommend it. It is overrun by tourists, though, I gotta admit. But, you know, it's for a good reason. Not only is the architecture and the environment itself really beautiful, but it also has excellent views of the surrounding Bay Area. Great view of San Francisco, Alcatraz, Angel Island if you look the other way, the East Bay, Mount Tam if you look north, and a lot of Southern Marin. So there's a really nice, really popular shoreline walk that you can find all these views on. So as long as you don't mind onlookers, it's a nice place to set up and paint. And really where I set up, you're only like a few feet away from stepping into the San Francisco Bay. So let's take a look at the painting itself. It's a relatively simple scene to paint, so it went by pretty fast. The most challenging aspect of the scene was to show the rich detail of the city at that scale and distance. So you really gotta compress the values as well as paint things fairly loosely in order to imply the detail, and that makes it read better. So having that dark mid-ground shape really helps. I had fun playing up the color of the water too. It wasn't quite that green, but you know, if you see those colors in there, there's nothing that says you can't play them up a bit. So it makes for a nice, clean and fresh color scheme. All right, let's move on to the next painting here. We got Eastern View from Kirby Cove. So from there was a short drive over the 101 to the Marin Headlands. So I had it in my mind that I wanted to paint the Golden Gate Bridge from Marin. So I went down to Kirby Cove to paint these next couple of scenes. It was a bit of a hike down to the beach, but it is a really great place to go. You get some nice natural wind shelter due to the shape of the cove and the direction it's facing. So even when the rest of the park is fiercely roaring winds around you, you can find some workable conditions down there as long as you don't mind a long trek back up. So that's what I did. I left my car at the top of the hill and did the, I don't know, probably like half-mile hike down. So let's take a look at the painting again here. I've been developing a slight tweak to my method of working with gouache. I like to start with simple shapes, like always, but I then add a second layer of saturated color with the anticipation that the subsequent layers will mix with what's already there. So this makes it so that the color stays cleaner for longer in the process. So you know that with gouache, your paint will reactivate if you wet it. So the natural wetness of the paint that you're putting on will likely mix with what's underneath. It's always funny to me when somebody compliments your painting way earlier than you think they should. Personally, I feel like the block-in stage isn't necessarily the most pretty part of the process, and yet it doesn't matter to people who I think just find it novel to come across a plein air painter in their everyday life during their adventures or whatever. So there was a group of campers. So by the way, you can also camp at Kirby Coves, which might be a good idea for you plein air painters. You want to just do that and spend a whole day there. But anyway, there was a group of campers that came by and they were walking along the beach where I was set up. And, you know, I barely started, maybe was about 10 minutes in. And one of them goes, "Oh, that's beautiful," or whatever, whatever they said exactly. So I never really know how to respond to that besides, you know, a thank you. But to me, that signals an interest in someone who's just out there living their best life or something like that. So let me show you the last one I did for the event. We got the light under the fog, also a 6x8 painting, also gouache, also watercolor paper mounted to board. So I had a feeling that I would want to stay down here and paint until sundown. So I'm really glad that I brought this extra panel with me. As the evening went on, the fog started to overtake the hills across the bridge, and there was enough light still coming through underneath the fog. So that's how the bridge got lit up. This one took a different approach than the others. I started with thick wet on wet washes to set the dark background up for the light shapes going on top of it. I pretty much went in without a drawing, which is not something I would really recommend for novice painters, but I have enough practice with drawing in tone to be able to confidently pull it off. And besides, it's gouache. I can always go back in and refine things pretty easily. Just paint over the inaccurate drawing with accurate drawing later on. So in order to get the feeling of strong light on the parts where the light hits, I put some saturated color as a base layer where I planned on layering lighter colors over it. It was a really nice peaceful time sitting at the beach, nearly alone, with this simple task in front of me. One of the best parts of plein air painting is the state of mind that it puts you into. It's a mixture of serenity and intensity. It's you, your painting, and your eyes versus the scene in front of you. You're making calculations and decisions in your mind as the environment keeps sending you information, and sometimes the environment keeps changing on you. So you're getting new and new information all the time. If you could really tap into that interaction, it could be really fun and fulfilling. At this point, all that was left to do was frame up everything and get it ready to display at the South Shore Mall in Alameda, which is the usual venue for the outdoor show. They do have the Frank Betts Center, which is like the community art space, and it is a really cool old Victorian building. It's a little bit harder to get people there, the casual people strolling by that could possibly turn into collectors. I did do a free gouache demo for the attendees of the event. It went well, but painting in front of people and talking through your process at the same time usually means that the quality of one or the other is going to suffer a bit. I think the most important thing to do is encourage people to ask questions and be engaged with what you're doing. Even if the painting isn't your greatest, at least they can walk away with learning something. I'll put a link in the description below to the Frank Betts Center website, and they have pictures of everybody who won awards along with their paintings. So there's always a circuit of local painters who do the plein air events, and it's always nice to see them and catch up with them because practice of painting is usually a solitary one, and you don't normally see them very often unless there is some sort of get-together. One of my highlights was actually meeting Danny Folkman, a fellow gouache painter whose work I've been following for about a year now. He's the young new hotshot on the scene, like I was 15 years ago. That's in the process of taking the gouache world by storm. He has a really fresh approach and interesting points of view in his paintings. I joke that he has fisheye eyes. Nathaniel Bice was another cool person I met. He's also a gouache artist who has a unique, colorful style and really deliberate brushwork, so if that's your thing, check him out. He lives in San Francisco, so I'm sure we'll run into each other at more plein air events. And by the way, I have all my paintings from this event available, so for the next week, if you buy them from my website, I will send them to you framed. That's not something I normally do. This isn't like some BS false scarcity ploy. I literally need the frames for the next plein air show in Sausalito, so this is your chance to grab one framed because in a couple weeks, they're coming off and they're gonna be on new paintings. So there you have it. There is my recap of the show. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you guys think and if you're interested in me doing more of these as well. And I'll do them not just for plein air events. And I want to try and do this for upcoming shows that I have. And just to give you guys a sense of the paintings in as best as I can show you, not just a still photo. That's going to be it for now. I do have ideas for more educational videos coming soon, as well as other ideas that I've had for a while now that I've been working on the moving past beta for my upcoming gouache mastery course. So that's been taking up the majority of my time. And once that's done, I'm going to be promoting it here along with just giving you more free tips and tricks when it comes to gouache and anything else. And yeah, I think that's all I need to update you on for now. So it's actually really difficult to end a YouTube video if you don't already have an ending in mind. So instead, I'm just going to awkwardly peter out. Bye.